Have you ever loved a man who seemed to drift further away the more he cared about you? A man who never said, "I love you," never brought you flowers, never sent sweet messages, and yet there was something in his eyes, in the way he stayed silent, that made it impossible for you to walk away. You tried to make sense of it. You asked yourself, if he loves me, why doesn't he say it? If he misses me, why doesn't he come? If he cares, why does he disappear every time I need him? And then you started doubting yourself. Maybe I imagined it all. Maybe this love was one-sided. The truth is, men don't love the way women do. They don't express affection the same way. They're not taught how. They're not encouraged to say, "I miss you," or "I need you every day." They grow up learning that emotions are weaknesses, that tears are shameful, that if you have to say it out loud, you've already lost control. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The same applies to love. There are men who don't know why they pull away. They don't understand why they feel angry, pressured, or suffocated, even when the woman in front of them has done nothing wrong. They can't name what they feel, and so they run, not because they don't love, but because they love too deeply, so deeply that it scares them to lose control, scares them to be seen, scares them to expose the softest, most vulnerable part of themselves, the part they've been taught to bury since they were boys. You see him withdraw, but maybe that's his way of silently begging you to come closer without making him feel ashamed of it. You see him go quiet, but maybe there's a storm inside his mind, a war between his instinct to hold on to you and his fear that he's not enough. You see him act cold, but maybe that's a mask he wears to keep you from seeing the parts of his soul that are slowly breaking apart. And then you walk away. Or you stay, but with exhaustion, with hurt, with doubt. Because no one ever told you men have hearts too, they just hide them well. And today, I want to take you on a journey, not just to understand him, but to understand yourself. To understand why we love, why we ache, why we keep falling into the same painful patterns. Through the lens of Carl Jung, with language that's gentle, simple, and emotional, we will step into the shadow where a man hides his feelings and find the light within it. Are you ready? He stops talking when it matters most. You text him something vulnerable. You open your heart. You ask him to show up, to explain, to be there. And in return, he goes quiet. Hours pass, maybe days, and nothing. It feels like rejection. It feels like abandonment. But what if I told you silence is not always indifference? Carl Jung believed that what is not integrated into our conscious self, the parts we suppress or cannot face, they take control in silence. And for many men, silence is where their fear lives. Silence is the only space where they feel safe enough to hide. Men are conditioned to stay composed, to be the rock, to never fall apart. Vulnerability threatens that identity. So when he receives a message that touches his emotions, even if it's a loving one, his subconscious flares up. He retreats. He shuts down, not because he doesn't care, but because he cares more than he knows how to handle. You see, love isn't always expressed in words. Sometimes love shows itself in fear, in avoidance, in absence. A man might go silent not to punish you, but to protect himself from how much he feels. He may not yet know how to process intimacy without losing his balance. And if he never learned emotional language, how to name his own sadness, guilt, desire, or longing, then your openness terrifies him. To love a man like this is to understand that silence can be a storm. Just because he isn't speaking doesn't mean he isn't overwhelmed inside. But here's the paradox: the more he cares, the more he distances. The deeper the connection, the stronger the urge to pull away. Because within him lives a boy who was once told, "Don't cry, don't be soft, don't need anyone." So now, as a man, when he feels deep connection, he associates it with danger, losing himself, being hurt, being seen. You text him your truth, you bare your heart, and he goes quiet. Not to reject you, but because his inner world is crashing with emotions he never learned to swim through. If you listen closely, silence speaks. It says, I want to love you, but I don't know how yet. And when that happens, the question becomes, do you wait for him to find his voice? Or do you walk away to protect your own? There is no right answer, only this truth. Love is not always loud. Sometimes it hides in silence, waiting to be understood or lost forever. He acts busy, distracted, like you're not a priority anymore. You used to talk every day. He'd check in, send memes, ask about your day. Now, he says he's busy, he's tired, he just has a lot going on, and you wonder what changed. Here's what most people don't realize: when a man starts to develop deep emotional attachment, he may not lean in. He may pull away, not because he doesn't feel anything, but because he's overwhelmed by how much he does. Carl Jung observed that the ego, the image we create to survive, often clashes with the deeper self, the one yearning for connection. The man who seems distant may in fact be at war within himself. Busyness becomes his shield, his calendar, his distractions, his excuses. They are not always lies. Sometimes they're defenses, emotional armor. He's not trying to hurt you. He's trying to survive his own vulnerability. The truth is, modern masculinity is a prison with invisible bars. Men are allowed to want success, money, sex, but love, intimacy, dependence. These things scare them because society never taught them how to receive affection without feeling weak, never taught them how to need someone and not feel ashamed. So he tells you, I've just got a lot on my plate right now. But what he's really saying is, I'm scared of how much you matter to me. He's afraid that if he lets you all the way in, he'll lose control, he'll lose his edge, he'll become dependent. And dependence to him feels like failure. But here's what's tragic in pushing you away to protect himself. He ends up hurting the one person who saw him clearly, you. And maybe you feel like you're chasing crumbs, a message here, a meeting there, and you start to believe you're too much, that you're asking for too much, but you're not. You're asking for presence, for honesty, for emotional courage, things he never learned how to give. So he hides behind his schedule, behind busy, behind unread texts and postponed plans, not to lose you, but to avoid losing himself in something he doesn't yet understand. If you've ever felt ignored by someone who once adored, you know this. Sometimes men disappear, not because they've stopped caring, but because they care more than they can comprehend. And until he learns that love is not a threat, until he realizes that vulnerability is not weakness, he will keep choosing distance over depth. Not because he wants to, because he doesn't yet know how not to. He jokes, he teases, but he won't say he loves you. He calls you a nerd, says you're dramatic, teases you about your favorite song, your messy handwriting, the way you pronounce a certain word. It's playful, light-hearted, even charming. But deep down, you start to wonder, why can't he just say how he feels? Why does he mask affection behind sarcasm? Why does it feel like he's hiding behind humor? Because he is. Carl Jung believed that when we cannot consciously integrate a part of ourselves, it expresses itself indirectly through projection, through defense, through disguise. Many men find safety in jokes, in humor, in not being taken too seriously, because the moment they speak from their heart, they feel exposed, and exposure feels dangerous. Telling you I love you is too real, too vulnerable, too risky. But calling you a dork when your eyes light up, that's safer. That's how he says, you make me smile. That's how he says, you're special to me, without saying it. You might think he's emotionally immature, maybe even emotionally unavailable. And sometimes he is. But more often, he's emotionally unpracticed. He's never been taught that it's okay to be soft, that it's okay to look a woman in the eyes and say, you matter to me, no armor, no irony, just truth. So instead, he wraps his affection in teasing, in boyish energy, in flirtation with a safe distance, not because he doesn't feel deeply, but because he feels too deeply, and that depth terrifies him. This is what Jung called the confrontation with the anima, the feminine, within the masculine. A man's capacity for feeling, for connection, for surrender. Most men fear this part of themselves. They exile it, mock it, push it away, because to embrace it would mean rewriting everything they've been taught about what it means to be a man. So he jokes, he distracts, he keeps it light, because lightness is his refuge from the weight of what he cannot yet express. But pay attention to the way he looks at you when you laugh, the way his voice softens when you're vulnerable, the way he remembers the smallest details. That's his heart speaking, not loudly, not clearly, but honestly. And if you can hear the love behind the laughter, then you've touched something real, something sacred, something he may not even understand yet. Sometimes men say, "I love you" without words. And sometimes those are the most honest declarations of all. He gets irritated easily, snaps at little things. You feel like you're walking on eggshells. At first he was gentle, patient. He listened when you spoke. He noticed the small things. But now he seems on edge, quick to anger. Small comments turn into arguments. You say something innocent and he rolls his eyes. His silence now feels heavier, colder. You wonder, what did I do wrong? And the truth might be nothing. Carl Jung once said, "Emotion is the chief source of becoming conscious. When powerful feelings rise up, especially love, fear, or vulnerability, they bring to the surface all the parts of ourselves we've buried. For many men, love doesn't just bring joy, it brings pain. Not because the relationship is broken, but because love triggers old wounds, childhood neglect, rejection, shame, fear of not being good enough. You didn't cause those wounds, but your presence, your kindness, your consistency, your softness brings them closer to the surface. And because he doesn't know how to name that pain, he deflects it. He gets angry, not because he hates you, but because he doesn't know what to do with what you make him feel. Jung called this the activation of the shadow, the hidden, repressed parts of the self. When a man is faced with real intimacy, his shadow awakens. All the feelings he's denied begin to push through. And if he's never done inner work, never met those parts of himself with compassion, he may lash out at the one person who makes him feel most. You. Anger becomes a mask for confusion, for fear, for sadness. He says, "You're overthinking." He says, "I need space." But beneath those words is a storm. I feel things I don't understand, and I'm scared of how real this is. You start to shrink yourself. You tiptoe around topics. You second-guess every message you send because you think avoiding conflict will bring back the man he used to be. But the man he used to be was never gone. He's just in hiding, overwhelmed by the intensity of the mirror you've become. Real love reflects everything, not just the beauty, but the brokenness. And if he hasn't made peace with his own brokenness, he may project it onto you. So the next time he raises his voice over something small, pause, not to excuse it, but to understand it. He's not fighting you. He's fighting the parts of himself that your love is bringing to the light. And until he can sit with those parts without fear, without shame, he will keep mistaking love for danger and closeness for threat. He disappears, then returns like nothing happened. One day he's present, attentive, saying all the right things. The next he's gone. No message, no call, just silence. And just when you've begun to let go, to convince yourself it meant nothing, he returns. As if nothing happened, with a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" You feel confused, angry, maybe even hopeful. You want to believe there's meaning behind the return, that maybe he realized something, that maybe he's changed. But what's really happening inside him? Carl Jung spoke of the split between the persona, the mask we wear, and the self, who we truly are. Many men live so deeply in their persona that they forget how to be real. Their true feelings scare them. So when love touches something raw inside them, they retreat. Disappearing becomes a defense mechanism. Distance gives them the illusion of control. He steps away, not to hurt you, but to stop himself from falling deeper. Because falling deeper means confronting emotions he has no language for. It means facing the possibility of loss, of being seen, of surrendering. When he disappears, he's not just ghosting you, he's ghosting his own feelings. But time passes. The echo of your presence lingers. He misses your voice, your energy, your softness. And then he returns, not with an apology, not with clarity, but with familiarity, with the hope that things can pick up where they left off without having to address the fear that made him run. You see, his return isn't always growth. Sometimes it's longing, sometimes it's regret, but often it's confusion. He doesn't know why he ran. He doesn't know why he came back. He just knows that something about you feels safe, even if he doesn't know how to honor it. This is what Jung would call an unconscious cycle, repeating patterns born from unresolved inner conflict. Until he becomes aware of that pattern, he will continue to run and return and run again. And you're left in limbo, between what could be and what never quite is. You start to question yourself. You replay every moment. You wonder what you did wrong. But this isn't about you. This is about a man torn between his desire for love and his fear of it. A man who hasn't yet faced the boy inside him, who learned to cope with pain by disappearing. You can't fix him. You can't teach him how to stay. You can only decide if you're willing to wait for a man who doesn't yet know how to hold what he's asking for. Because love isn't about who comes back. It's about who shows up and stays. He says he's not ready but keeps holding on. You tell him what you want: honesty, commitment, clarity, a real relationship. And he listens, quietly. Maybe he even nods. Then comes the answer: I'm just not ready for something serious, not ready for love, not ready for what you're offering. But what follows is even more confusing. He doesn't leave. He stays in your life, sends late-night messages, asks how your day was, gets jealous when you talk to someone else. He says he can't give you more, yet acts like you're his. And you begin to question your worth. If he really wanted you, wouldn't he choose you fully? Carl Jung taught that we are often ruled not by what we consciously want, but by what we unconsciously fear. And for many men, love awakens a fear they cannot name, the fear of surrender. To love fully is to give up control. It's to let someone see the unguarded self, the flaws, the chaos, the softness. And if he's never felt safe doing that, if love once meant pain, abandonment, betrayal, then no matter how much he feels for you, he may still resist choosing you. Because choosing you means facing all of that. So he lives in between, not yours, not gone, just hovering. It's not manipulation, it's fragmentation. Part of him wants love. The other part wants safety. Part of him knows you're good for him. The other part is terrified that if he lets you in, he'll lose himself. Jung would call this the tension of opposites, two opposing forces within the psyche pulling in different directions. Until they're integrated, the man remains stuck, immobile, unclear. And you're left in the emotional purgatory of almost. Almost his, almost chosen, almost loved fully. But here's what you must remember. Not ready is not a moral failure. It's not a lack of love. It's a lack of wholeness. Until he makes peace with his past, until he chooses healing over hiding, he will keep offering half versions of connection. Not because he's cruel, but because he's incomplete. You deserve presence. You deserve certainty. You deserve a love that doesn't flinch when named. And if he can't give that to you now, then loving him might mean letting him go. Because love should never feel like waiting for someone to become brave enough to choose you. He admires your strength, but punishes your independence. He tells you he loves how confident you are, how passionate, how you speak your mind. He says you're unlike anyone he's ever met. And for a while you believe him. But then something shifts. Suddenly, your independence feels threatening to him. Your success, your self-assurance, your ability to be okay without him, it creates distance. He becomes cold, distant, maybe even critical. He says you're too much, that you don't need anyone, that he doesn't know where he fits in your life. And it confuses you, because didn't he once say, those were the very things he admired? Carl Jung understood this tension as the projection of the anima, the man's internal feminine image. When a woman activates that within him, she becomes both muse and mirror. She awakens his capacity for feeling, but also reflects the parts of himself he has yet to develop. Your strength reflects his unacknowledged vulnerability. Your clarity exposes his confusion. Your emotional maturity highlights where he still has growing to do. And for some men, that's unbearable. So instead of rising to meet you, he resents you. Not because you did anything wrong, but because being close to you makes him feel small, inadequate, unworthy. It's not your power he fears. It's what your power reveals about his lack of it. So he pulls away. He tests you. He makes you feel like you're too independent, like your very self-sufficiency is the problem. But here's the truth. A healthy man is not intimidated by your wholeness. He's inspired by it. He doesn't need to dim your light to feel seen. He doesn't need you to shrink to feel safe. He wants you radiant, full, untamed. The man who punishes your independence is not a bad man. He's an unhealed man, one who equates closeness with comparison, one who hasn't yet realized that love is not a competition. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And if being who you truly are, bold, vibrant, self-assured causes someone to retreat, then maybe their love was never meant to contain you. Love isn't asking someone to be less so you can feel more. It's learning to stand beside someone powerful and not flinch. So let him go. If your light feels like too much for him, the one who's meant for you will never ask you to turn it down. He wants your softness, but tests it with distance. He says he loves your heart, the way you care, the way you listen. He tells you you're different, that being around you feels peaceful, like a break from the world. But over time it feels like he's pushing you away, cancelling plans, taking longer to reply, forgetting the little things he once remembered so well. And yet when you pull back, he notices. He comes closer, just enough to keep you there. It feels like a push and pull, like emotional whiplash. Carl Jung would say this is not a game. It's a manifestation of inner fragmentation. Men who grow up disconnected from their emotional world often crave what they do not know how to hold. They seek softness, but once they find it, they fear it. Because real softness, your gentleness, your presence, your care awakens something tender inside them. Something they've spent years suppressing. And when that awakening comes, so does panic. He pulls away not because you did something wrong, but because your presence brings him too close to the part of himself that still aches. The part that was never held, never heard, never safe. So he distances himself. He stops calling. He acts like nothing is wrong. But make no mistake, something is stirring within him. Your softness has cracked his armor, and he doesn't know whether to lean into it or run from it. Jung described this as the awakening of the feeling function in those who've overdeveloped their thinking or instinctual selves. It's uncomfortable, vulnerable. It challenges everything he thought made him strong, and yet he returns. Because despite the fear, something in him recognizes the truth in you. He doesn't test you to be cruel. He tests you because he's terrified you'll leave just like everyone else. And in some twisted way, if he pushes you first, he won't have to face the pain of losing you later. But here's the truth. Your softness is not weakness. Your presence is not pressure. Your love is not a burden. You are not here to prove your worth through patience. You are not here to earn consistency by enduring confusion. You are the medicine he's been avoiding. But healing only happens when it's chosen. So let him figure out if he's ready to receive what he says he wants. And remember, you can be soft and still walk away. You can love and still leave. Because the right man won't need to be convinced that your heart is a gift. He will know, and he will rise to meet it. He doesn't talk about his past, but lives inside it every day. You ask him simple questions. What was your childhood like? What happened in your last relationship? Do you believe in love? And he pauses, smiles a little, changes the subject. Or just says, I don't really like talking about the past. At first you don't push. You think he'll open up when he's ready. But time passes, and the silence around his history grows heavier. His moods shift without warning. His reactions feel disproportionate. His triggers surprise you. It's as if you're paying for wounds you didn't cause. Carl Jung once wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When a man refuses to face his past, he doesn't leave it behind. He drags it into the present and into every relationship he enters. The breakup he never healed from, the father who never showed up, the first love who betrayed him, the shame of failure, the grief of abandonment. It's all still there, beneath the surface, dictating his fears, his walls, his silence. You may think, if I just love him enough, he'll feel safe to open up, and maybe he will. But love alone can't excavate what someone has buried out of fear. He might keep you at arm's length because letting you in means inviting you into a story he hasn't yet accepted. One filled with pain, confusion, and unprocessed emotion. To talk about his past would mean confronting it. And for many men, that confrontation feels like death, a threat to the identity they've carefully constructed. So instead, he pretends it doesn't exist. But the body remembers. The nervous system remembers. The shadow remembers. And even if he never speaks of it, you'll feel it in the way he flinches at certain words, in the way he avoids real intimacy, in the way he sabotages moments of closeness. You're not imagining it. You're meeting his past, disguised as his present. Jung called this the tyranny of the unconscious, when what we refuse to face ends up controlling us. You can love him with compassion. You can hold space. But you cannot heal what he denies. He must choose to turn around and face the ghosts himself, to sit with the grief, to make peace with the parts of himself he abandoned long ago. Only then can he show up for you fully presently, and without the weight of yesterday distorting the love you're trying to build today. Because a man who won't talk about his past isn't protecting you from pain. He's protecting himself from remembering. He says he wants love but chooses chaos instead. He tells you he's tired of the games, that he's looking for something real, that he wants to build, to grow, to settle into a deeper kind of love. And part of you believes him because he says all the right things. But then, you notice the patterns. He flirts with attention, but avoids consistency. He craves intimacy, but resists stability. He starts fires just to feel something, and when things get calm, he grows restless. It's as if he's addicted to emotional volatility, the highs, the lows, the drama. And you wonder if he truly wants love. Why does he keep choosing everything that destroys it? Carl Jung would say, this is the unconscious compulsion to repeat. When we haven't healed our inner wounds, we don't seek peace, we seek what's familiar. And for some men, love was never safe. It was conditional, chaotic, unpredictable. So when they encounter a love that's steady, grounding, and real, it confuses their nervous system. They mistake calm for boredom. They interpret safety as disinterest. They associate peace with danger. Because in their internal map, love equals instability, attention equals drama, desire equals emotional turbulence. So even if he craves love on a conscious level, his subconscious sabotages it. He stirs conflict, withdraws affection, pulls you into cycles of confusion, not because he doesn't care, but because his inner child still believes that love must hurt to be real. Jung described this as the repetition of trauma, through romantic projection, reenacting old emotional injuries in current relationships in a desperate attempt to resolve them. But the irony is, without awareness, resolution never comes, only repetition. You try to be patient, to anchor the connection, to prove that love doesn't have to be painful, but until he decides to confront the part of him that confuses chaos with passion, he will continue to destroy the very thing he says he wants. You are not the chaos. You are not the storm. You are the shelter. And if he can't stop running toward the fire, you can't keep burning just to keep him warm. Because love is not found in chaos. It's found in the quiet, when both people are finally ready to stop surviving and start healing. And that kind of love doesn't scream. It doesn't test. It doesn't tear you apart. It holds. It sees. It chooses peace over patterns. And when he's ready, he'll know love isn't something you chase through destruction. It's something you build gently, patiently, and on purpose. He won't tell you this, but he's never felt safe in love. Not truly, not fully, even when he's said the words, even when he's tried to commit. Somewhere deep inside, love has always felt like a risk, not a refuge, and maybe you felt it. In the way he hesitates when things get close, in the way he tenses when you express your needs, in the way his eyes sometimes hold a sadness he can't explain. It's the part of him that never learned how to rest in connection. Carl Jung believed that the human psyche is shaped not only by personal experience, but by collective wounds, the unconscious inheritance of pain passed down through generations. For many men, emotional safety was never modeled. They were taught strength through silence, worth through achievement, masculinity through detachment. So when real love appears, not just passion or attraction, but love that sees and holds, it doesn't feel safe. It feels foreign, vulnerable, exposing. To receive love without having to earn it, that's terrifying, because it requires him to lay down the armor, to be seen without performance, to trust that he can be held in his softness and not be abandoned for it. And if he's never known that kind of safety, he will resist it. He'll question your intentions. He'll test your loyalty. He'll withdraw when you get too close. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because he's waiting for the moment it all falls apart. That's what he's known. That's what his nervous system expects. And here's the tragedy: even as he longs for deep love, he struggles to believe it's real, or worse, that he's worthy of it. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And in love, accepting oneself means allowing another to see all of you, the strength and the shame, the hope and the hurt." He won't say it out loud. He may not even admit it to himself. But somewhere deep inside, he's asking, if I show her who I really am, will she still choose me? And until he learns to answer that question from within, until he becomes a safe place for himself, he will struggle to let anyone else in. So if he pushes you away, it's not always rejection. Sometimes it's fear dressed in silence. Sometimes it's love waiting to feel safe enough to be seen. And now perhaps you see him more clearly, not just the man, but the boy inside him, the one who learned to stay silent, to stay distant, to stay strong even when it hurt. You felt the weight of his withdrawal, the ache of his silence, the sting of his inconsistency, and maybe for a long time you thought it was your fault, but it was never about your worth. It was about his wounds. Carl Jung believed that healing is not about becoming someone new, It's about remembering who we were before we learned to hide. So if you're loving someone who hides behind silence, who runs when things get real, who says he wants love but trembles when it shows up, remember this. You are not his savior. You are not his fixer. You are a mirror. And mirrors can't heal. They only reveal. You've shown him what's possible. You've reflected back his tenderness, his fear, his longing. And that is powerful. But healing is a choice, and only he can make it. So let go of the fantasy that love alone is enough to change someone who isn't ready. Let go of the guilt for wanting more. Let go of the hope that if you just stay long enough, love will finally feel safe for him. And instead, turn inward. Ask yourself, does this love make me feel seen, safe, soft? Because you deserve a love that doesn't confuse you. A love that doesn't hurt more than it heals. A love that stays. And maybe one day he will become the man who can offer that. The man who turns toward love instead of away from it. The man who finally realizes that real strength is found in surrender. But until then, don't wait. Live, heal, keep your heart open. Because someone out there is already learning how to love without fear. And when he meets you, he won't hesitate. He'll recognize you, not as a lesson, but as home.